Hey, third time's a charm. Welcome back. It's Mind Your Money Mondays, and I am Callis. And today we're talking about your workspace, how to streamline your workspace for when it's time to handle those finances. When it comes to managing your finances, you want to make sure your space is a place of where you can gain clarity, you can be focused and not being caught up by all the things that's going on. Hello, Joanna. Thanks for coming back in. This is the third time I'm having to hit this record button because I was just having difficulties, but I'm back and we're talking about that workspace. And I'm asked the question, do you guys have a designated space that you do your financial management? Do you have like a home office, a workspace, or do you just do it at the kitchen table or you take it to your bedroom? Let me know. Whichever it is, either all the things that we're going to discuss, whether it's a workspace or a designated office, the same advice would work for that. We're talking primarily about the place that you go to manage your finances. And today we're talking about the home office. I'm recording from my home office. So I want to share with you guys some things that you can do. So when you get into that space, you feel a little bit less stressed. So first thing you're going to do is assess that workspace. Number one, is that space tidy or is it chaotic? A lot of times, if you have papers and shoes and bags and clothes and laundry all stacked up, it's not a surprise that bills are being paid late. Because if you toss your paperwork down alongside all that other stuff, that's where you can lose track of your things, especially if you don't have that on an automated system of paying and you have to physically begin to manage your finances, your paperwork, your tax papers, with all that insurance papers, all that good stuff that you need to keep track of. And something to consider. Number one, is that place tidy or is it chaotic? Number two, is the desk that you're working at or the workspace too small or is it the right size? So my office space, ours is large enough to hold 2 desks, bookshelves, chairs, but not everybody has the convenience of having that much footprint for their space. But the space that you're working in, is it small or is it just the right size? Might have to get a bigger station if you have the added real estate to do that, or might have to shift where you're managing those finances. Number 3, do you have adequate lighting? I'm getting older. My community is getting older. And sometimes the overhead lighting is not enough. And sometimes we might need to have a lamp just to help us look over the night, especially if you wait till nighttime like me. I wait till nighttime generally to go over my bills and my paperwork. And sometimes the overhead lighting is not enough and I need to flip on the lamp. So that's one thing I want you to think about. Do you have adequate lighting at your workspace? Third thing, it seems like something so simple, but is the chair comfortable? If you're not using a chair, if you're laying up in the bed, whatever you're doing to manage those things, is that space comfortable? Does it put you in a state of mind that you want to move into getting things organized? So that's the next thing I want you to think about when it comes to your workspace. Fifth thing, do you have a file cabinet? And if you do, is it full to capacity, busting out, and you just use it as a dumping ground for all paperwork in? That's what I want you to look at in your workspace. Now, next week, we're going to start talking about how to organize our financial records. So it's going to be important. If you don't have a file cabinet, we'll be talking about some other ways that you can use to still organize those financial documents, what you need to keep, what you don't need to keep. What I find sometimes with file cabinets, the information in there is outdated. So sometimes we might have tax returns that's 8, 9 years old. You only need to keep the last 3 years. Sometimes you have insurance documents. You're no longer with that insurance provider. So a lot of times our file cabinets is just harboring old data. So we're going to be talking more on that next week. But that's one thing I want you to look at, is reassess the file cabinet that you have in place or the filing system that you have in place in your workspace, you guys. The next thing I want you to do is, if you have bookcases in your space. So let me see if this is going to allow me to do that. It probably won't. I haven't done this in a while. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to flip this real quick. So across from me, y'all going to see a little bit. So you know I run a construction safety company, but in the case of bookcases, so I'm looking across at my bookcases, and what do you notice? You can actually see the books, right? You can actually see clear places on the book. The other desk that you were looking at is my husband's desk. He doesn't necessarily keep his desk as neat as mine, but that's his desk, and I let him do what he wants with his desk. But as far as with your bookcases, I want you guys to look at your bookcases. You'd be surprised that sometimes you have multiple or duplicate books, or you've read books, you're no longer interested in rereading them again, or your interest has changed. And if that's the case, I want you guys to start to pull those things from your bookcase to begin to free up space. Sometimes the mind has to have a place that it lands that's not filled with everything. So it's okay to have a blank space on your bookshelf or less books in there. There's a great website, because I'm an avid reader. There is a great website I want you guys to check into. If you have a lot of books and you want to get rid of them, you can either donate to your local library. Yes, libraries still exist. And yes, they still accept books. We have our half-price books. You'll see those discount books if you want to sell the books. But if you're into swapping books, there's a great website that I like to use. It's called Paperback Swap. And what you can do is swap books that you have with other books of interest without the cost, you guys, of purchasing a new books. So that's a great one, and I'll put the link in the video once we get done. But that's a great place. I want you to begin to look at your bookcases in your workspace if you happen to have one, and start to pull some of that extra stuff that we no longer need outside of that. Also, does your workspace, your home office, does it serve dual purpose? I know some people, like I said, they don't have a fully dedicated office space. It might be in their living room. It might be a space in their bedroom. Is that space? Is it your home office? Is it your guest room that you have a designated space? More reason if that is a shared space to begin to organize that space. So when you get in there, especially if you have your financial records and it's another place, you don't want those documents just lingering and hanging around. So yeah, please don't hold on to unnecessary things, and to think about whether this is a dual space that you'll be storing financial records, and is this a dual space that you'll use for other things outside of your financial management. So that's the first thing we talk about when it comes to streamlining your home office. You've got to assess your current workspace. Here's where the big deal comes in. It's time to clean that workspace, and that has to be done in phases, you guys. So we're going to talk about phase one when it comes to your workspace. This is something that I advise you to do within a time block, no more than an hour, because after an hour it becomes very overwhelming and you'll find yourself less productive. And if you want to do it even in 30 minutes, it's even better. What you're going to need a timer of some sort, and you're going to need a trash bag or some boxes. And this is when we're going to begin to eliminate in this process. Remember, throughout this Mind Your Money series, we're going to talk about elimination, categorizing, and organizing. So in cleaning that workspace, we're going to work on elimination, and we're going to do it in a specific time block. Set your timer, and what I want you guys to do is to begin collecting and dumping. This is not the time that we begin to organize. There are some specific things when we walk into our workspace, we know it's junk. Speaking of junk mail, old mail, bills that's been paid, it's just sitting in a stack that you just didn't take the time to toss. So those are things that I want you to look for in your workspace. Junk mail, bills that's already been paid, we need to toss it. Other things that you might seem lingering, and believe it or not, people still buy newspapers, or they have newspapers that's delivered to their home. Their neighborhood newspaper, we get a newspaper. It's a smaller newspaper that we have delivered. It's a community newspaper, so we know what they're doing transportation-wise, real estate, schools, laws, bonds, or anything that we need to vote on. is usually sent in this newspaper. And so we get that as well. And sometimes those things will stack. We didn't read it, but we just didn't toss it. So I want you to look for that again in your workspace. Are there any old newspapers, neighborhood newspapers? Are there any magazines that you have already read, or you have a magazine that you have no interest in reading? Like for some reason we started getting golf magazines. I'm like, I don't play golf. My husband doesn't play golf. I'm not really sure why we're getting this golf magazine. So we have, from time to time, this golf magazine show up. So we toss it. So that's something that I want you to look for in your workspace as well, are newspapers and magazines, things that you can toss into the recycle bin and dispose of. Other thing I want you to look for, sometime in our office space, my kids, believe it or not, they're teenagers, but from time to time, they still have an art project too. So if you have little kids, if you have teenagers, or if you're a doodler of yourself, sometimes we'll have our art, we'll have love letters, we'll have notes and sticky things all surrounding our workspace, which has already served its purpose. Or if it's something that we want to keep, that's something I want you to put in that box. Put a little sticky on it that says memorabilia, and we'll deal with it at another time. Remember, this initial 30-minute to 60-minute time block, it is just in the phase of elimination. It's not for categorizing or organizing specifically just yet. The next thing that I want you guys to look at, look at the floor and the surrounding areas, especially if this is a dual space location. Begin to look. Do we have laundry here? Do we have shoes that was brought in here? Do we have umbrellas? Do we just have stuff, blankets and things like that, that is in our workspace that has nothing to do with the management of our finances? This is an opportune time. We're going to toss that in a box for later, and we'll deal with it then. We don't worry about taking it and putting it into its proper place for the moment, but keep that in mind as well, you guys. Also, what I want you to do during this phase is take a look at your tools. I'm talking like your pens, your staplers, your toner cartridges, dried up markers, all these things that sometimes we have lingering in our workspace that serves no purpose, or if we have duplicate of a thing. Maybe you have kids that need scissors and pens and paper and all that stuff. We can designate a little spot for them later. But in the meantime, any extras, put it in the box. That's what I want you guys to work on. And when the time is up, go ahead and take a breather. Take a look at your space. From first glance, it should be a little bit more tidy than when you first looked at it. Remember, first step was assessing it. Second step was the clean out phase, elimination, quick elimination, 30 to 60 minutes only. Don't think too hard. Grab and go. Grab and go. Then the third and final thing, you guys, when it comes to streamlining your home office to set you up for financial success, is now what do we do with the things that we gathered? Now, in first glance, we focus on tools and staplers and markers and things. But how much equipment and gadgets do you have lingering? Sometimes we find that we have a scanner, a faxer, a copier. We have all these different things. We have an embroidery machine. We got all these different gadgets sitting in the room, but it's not something that we use on an everyday basis like we would use our desktop, or we would use a laptop in that space, and possibly a printer. With technology and a lot of things being digital and electronic, there's no need to print out a lot of things, and sometimes we'll have duplicate printers in there. One doesn't work, but we just didn't take the time to dispose of it. So I need you on the third phase to look at your big gadgets. Is your space overwhelmed? Is it something that you can donate? Is it something that just definitely needs to be trashed? Dispose of it in that phase. Also, we're going to start to pare down. So what I mean by pare down, how many tape dispensers do we need? How many pens do we physically need in our space? Especially if you're low on real estate and you just have a small space. You don't have time to have 5 packs of paper, 50 markers, 25 highlighters, 20 black pens, 10 blue pens, whatever it is. It's time that you start to pare those things in the final stage, as well as all those things that we picked up. Remember, there was shoes, there was handbags, there was blankets, there was laundry, all these things in our workspace. Now is the time that we take to go ahead and put those things up in its rightful place. So it won't be lingering in that box that we set aside just about in the last hour. We're back for the last 30 minutes in the final cleanup and pare down in our home office. Want you to go ahead and put those things away in its rightful place. So when we come back next week, we'll have a clear head. We can begin to really set up our financial management files. So today was all about streamlining your workspace, streamlining your home office space. So when you come back to our next step in the Mind Your Money series, you have a clear workspace to work with. You don't feel so chaotic when you walk over to your work desk, your workspace, your work office, whatever it may be that you use for financial management. I want you to have a level head when we return next week, and we're going to be focusing on setting up our financial management system here in the Mind Your Money series. As always, I thank you guys for joining me live here at 8 p.m. here in our Pearls and Purpose community. If you're catching this on the replay, leave me what your number one takeaway is. Do me a favor, subscribe and share if you're catching us in another platform, you guys. And as always, I thank you, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye now.